Hello, dear friends. Welcome to this talk. I'd like to talk about Parhst Miketz, which we just read this past Shabbat. It's also, we have three things that fall on the same day, because this Shabbat was both Shabbat, of course, and Rosh Chodesh. That's the beginning of the new month of Tevet. So it happened at the same time, and of course, Hanukkah. So we had three Sefer Torahs and okay, Parhst Miketz, and I'd like to talk about Joseph the dreamer. And I also want to talk about the question of whether Joseph was actually, he's considered Safnat Paneach, the one who is able to understand the hidden. That's what he's called by Pharaoh. So we assume that he is an interpreter of dreams because that's what it says, of course. The question is this totally true? And I want to go through it according to the way it's understood both in the Bible and also in rabbinic midrash. So we have three in the last week's parsha and this week's parsha. We have three presentations of Joseph concerning dreams, of course. And the first presentation is the presentation of the Joseph's dream. Now, Joseph's dream, of course, is a dream in which the first one seems to be he's dreaming from things that a young person would think about. He's the alumot, which are the bundles of grain in the field. And his first dream is that the 11 bundles are bowing to his bundle, meaning his brother's bundle is bowing to his. And as a young man who lives at home and his brothers go out to be the breadwinners as shepherds, of course, a young man at the age of 17 would dream that the day will come, well, I will be the one who is the breadwinner for the whole family. And therefore, Joseph understood that dream. It was a dream, like we say in the Talmud, Mihir Hurei Libo, of something a person thinks about during the day, they dream about at night. Therefore, Joseph totally understood his first dream and presented it to his brothers. In the Hebrew, it says, Vayaged le'achav, he told his brothers. In other words, he wanted to sort of like boast that he is going to be the breadwinner eventually for the family, and that's why the brothers did not take it so positively. So the first dream he totally understand because it was something about things that he thinks about during the day. It's the second dream that he had after that, where the sun, the moon, the stars bow down to him, that Joseph did not understand. This time when it says he told it to his brothers, in Hebrew it says vayisaper, which is a little bit more moderately, it's toned down, which means he just related it to them because he himself pondered and wondered what it meant. And he told to his father. So this was not boasting because to his father he had a different relationship. And his father was the one who interprets the dream. He says to Joseph, can it be, Havon Avo, that can it be that I and your mother and your brothers will come to bow down to you? In other words, the interpretation came from the father, from Jacob, that he understood that the sun, the moon, the stars bowing down to Joseph was the father, the mother, and the brothers bowing down to him. Joseph takes this very seriously because his father, Jacob, is a prophet. Joseph is not, remember. He doesn't get prophecy. So the interpreter of this dream is actually Jacob, even though Jacob is puzzled because the mother had died, meaning Rachel had died. However, it could be that was referring to Bilhah, which was Rachel's midwife, who also brought up Joseph. But anyhow, it was puzzling to him, but it says, Aviv shamar et hadavar. Aviv shamar et hadavar, which means that his father remembered the dream. And this is the dream for Joseph. Then, of course, Joseph is sold into slavery down to Egypt and Potiphar. And then, of course, there's what happens with Potiphar's wife, and he's put into the prison. And in the prison, he meets the Sar HaMashkim Sar Hovim, the butler who gives wine to Pharaoh, and the baker. And he listens to their dreams, and he right away interprets it. So you would think from there, this is the man who knows how to interpret dreams. Rashi, bringing the Midrash, the rabbinic interpretations from the Second Temple, gives a different understanding of this. The Midrash says on the verse, Ish kefritron chalomo patar, which is brought in two cases, both when it happens and when the butler is telling it to Paro. Ish kefitron chalomo patar, which literally means every ish kefitron chalomo chalam. In other words, each one of them dreamed the dream. So this is a question of what it means. Literally, it sounds like it means they dreamed the dream and its meaning and its solution. The Midrash says each one dreamed their dream and the other guy's solution. The butler dreamed his dream and the solution of the baker, and the baker dreamed his dream and the solution of the butler. So therefore, when Joseph heard this, all he had to do was put one and one together and come up with the answer. It wasn't that difficult. So that would appear then that Joseph was not a major interpreter of dreams. Also notice that when Joseph says to Sarah Mashkim and Sarah Ophir, the butler and the baker, the meaning of the dreams, he doesn't give the introduction that he does to Pharaoh in this week's Parsha. He doesn't say God is the one who interprets dreams, etc. Just says them, this is the meaning of the dream, which means he realized, according to the Midrash, that by listening to the dreams, each one was actually dreaming the meaning of the other guy's dreams. That was quite obvious. But he just tells them. It could be also that he was also hoping that they would see him as a dream interpreter. Maybe they would help him because, remember, he said to the butler, please remember me. According to the Midrash, he was punished for this, and he stayed in prison another 2 years, meaning it's me, I helped you, instead of God being in the center of what's going on here. So 2 years later, which is our Parsha, Pharaoh has a dream. And he's very disturbed by this dream. And nobody can interpret it, which means they can interpret it, but not to Pharaoh, because he doesn't feel that their interpretations are correct. And they bring Joseph. Now, Joseph starts with an interesting introduction, because a few times he says to Pharaoh, what God wants to relate to you, this is what you're dreaming in your dreams. And God is the interpreter of dreams. What's really going on here is like this. You see, according to the Midrash, it's not clear that Jacob, until this point, knew how to interpret dreams. Again, his dream was interpreted by his father. The butler and the baker, according to the Midrash, was obvious from the story they were telling, the meaning of each dream. But what Joseph does realize is that this is a pivotal, a watershed moment in his life. When he stands there before Pharaoh, he realizes that it's connected to his dream as a young man at the age of 17. I think he's 30 when he stands before Pharaoh. And he realizes that this is the message that God was conveying to him, because his father interpreted the dream, and his father's a prophet. And therefore he starts and he says, this is a message from God, because I know that my dream when I was 17 was a message from God. And you, Pharaoh, getting the message in the name of your people. Now, what are the aspects of the dream of Pharaoh that Joseph could have known from his own dream at the age of 17? The second dream he would have understood, because his dream about the alumot, about the bundles of wheat, represented the idea of being the breadwinner, prosperity, food. And in Pharaoh's dream, with the sheaves, the stalks of grain, where some of them are healthy looking and some of them are beaten by the wind. So these stalks, these shibolim, which are like strands of grain, these are representing, of course, prosperity, food in the land of Egypt. So, and this Joseph knows from his own dream. And therefore, of course, if you have the skinny ones, the ones which are weather-beaten, eating up the healthy ones, it's not a good sign. It means there's going to be a problem with prosperity and food in the land of Egypt. What about the cows? Well, Joseph knows from his own dream that the second dream, Jacob told him, was about people who are close to you, his mother, his father, his brothers. So he figures the cows are also the people who are close to Paro. So the fat cows are the ones who lead Egypt is Pharaoh and all his royal house, and the skinny cows, of course, are the people, because they're the ones who don't have, and the fat cows do have. But if the skinny cows are eating out the fat cows, that's not a good sign. What else did Joseph know from his dream? A third thing that Joseph knew from his dream, is that they seem to come in twos, because his dreams came in two, and the butler and the baker, their two dreams seem to be also connected to each other. And Pharaoh's dreams came in two, even though they were not the same night, just like Joseph. So Joseph understood that the two dreams are one. So when he says to Paro that two dreams are one, he knows it from his own experience. Now, I'm not actually arguing here that Joseph, when he's standing before Pharaoh, did not have any ability of dream interpreting. He might have developed it. I'm also saying that if this was his pivotal watershed moment, where he feels that God is now creating his destiny interlinked with Pharaoh, it's very possible he also got what we call in our tradition Ruach HaKodesh, which means divine inspiration, which is the ability to perceive certain things sometimes beyond the scope of your own knowledge, which is happening at this moment, because this is the moment that he dreamt about from a young man. And Joseph knows that he's standing before Pharaoh, that this is it, and this is what's happening, and this is where he now has to play out the role that he's been waiting for all these years. Now, what's interesting, though, is that Joseph is related to the dreams. If you look at the forefathers, Abraham and Isaac, they were prophets, and God spoke to them, but it doesn't say that God spoke to them in a dream. If anything, the only people that God spoke to in a dream with Abraham and was, of course, Avimelech, who God appeared to him in a dream and said, let his wife go because he is a prophet. Hashev eshet ha'ish ki navihu. But not about the forefathers. Jacob is the first forefather who God appears to him in a dream twice. First with the ladder, the sulam. God appears in a dream, and later on tells his wives that the angel appeared to him in a dream about how he was able to, of course, get his money from Laban and put together certain types of sticks that the sheep looked at, and the sheep came out spotted, etc. So Jacob receives his prophecy through dreams. Joseph is a dreamer, but no prophecy. Prophecy stops with Jacob. Jacob goes down to Egypt, and the prophecy will not return until the time of Moshe, until the time of Moses, a few hundred years later, because Moses is now with the people, and the people are a different entity than just the tribe and individuals, and they're also going towards the land. So, so Joseph now is the dreamer. The dreamer is the one, of course, who's in the diaspora, the galut, the exile. As it says in Tehillim, in the Shir HaMa'alot, the songs of ascent, B'shuv Hashem et Shivat Zion hayinu kecholmim. When God brought back our exiles to Zion, we were as dreamers. Meaning the exile is the dream. That's the way the Talmud understands it. You could say we were shocked like dreamers, but the Talmud says the exile is like a dream. The Talmud in Ta'anit tells the story of Choni HaMa'agel, who looked at this verse and said, can it be that a person could dream for 70 years? Because, of course, the Babylonian exile was 70 years. And then, of course, according to the story, he falls asleep for 70 years. He's the Jewish Rip Van Winkle, you might say. So the exile is called the dream. Why is it called the dream? It's called the dream because in the exile, the Jewish people are a people, but a minority in other nations. And therefore, they lack the complete control of the circumstances of their lives. We don't have the government, and we don't have a police force, and we don't have an army. So basically, we are at the mercy of the other nations. The circumstances are decided by the other nations. And we can only decide how to root ourselves and act within these circumstances, just like a dream. In a dream, you dream, but the circumstances are out of your ability to control. It's your subconscious which controls the circumstances. You might say to yourself in the dream, this guy Joe that I work with in the office, I really don't feel like seeing him now. And there he is, of course, because you thought of Joe. So he appears in the dream. So the circumstances are controlled by your subconscious, but how to act is controlled by you. That's what the diaspora is. That's the exile. So that's one aspect of the dream. The second aspect is that you need to dream in order to know how to get out of the exile. You need dreamers like Joseph who know how to take you out. If you remember the end of Joseph's life, he says to his brothers, Hakod yifkod Elohim etchem. God will remember you. And please take my bones out of here with you when you go back. And Moses does that. When Moses takes the people out of Egypt, he takes the bones of Joseph with him to fulfill the request that Joseph had. Joseph, now two things are interesting. The word chalom, which of course is related to, which is the word dream, which is very much related to Joseph. There's something about that word which encapsulates all different things that happen in the life of Joseph. If you take the word chalom, which is three letters, chet lamed mem, when you have three letters and you interchange the three letters, you can come out with 6 words of 3 letters. So, and all these 6 words somehow relate to the life of Joseph, which is very interesting. Let's take the first one, of course, is chalom, just written by its root, chet lamed mem, which means a dream. And Joseph is the dreamer. The second one then would be chamal, which means to have compassion and mercy. The brothers did not have compassion on Joseph. They threw him into a pit and he was screaming. They went down to eat their bread and their lunch in the meantime while he was there, so they're far away so they wouldn't hear the screaming, and then they just sold him off. So they showed no compassion. That's the word chamal. Now let's take the next one. That was starting with the chet. Let's take the one starting with, say, with the lamed. So lamed you have, of course, lechem. So lechem is bread, and bread you have twice. Number one, when the brothers sat down to break bread when they were selling Joseph, and of course Potiphar's wife, where it says in the text. And Joseph also says that Potiphar gave everything to me except for the bread that he eats. Rashi brings the Midrash, says the bread that he eats refers to Potiphar's wife, meaning, I can't touch you. He gave me the whole house, but I need to stay away from you out of the honor that I have to Potiphar. When Potiphar's wife tries to seduce him. So that's the bread. Of course, the word lechem is also the letters lacham, which means to fight. And Joseph's life was a struggle. From the age of 17 on, it was a struggle until, of course, he meets his brothers again and things sort of work out. But he had to struggle as a slave and with Potiphar and in the prison, and with his brothers until, as I said, he was able to create some appeasement and relationship with them again. So this struggle is the lochem that Joseph is. Then if you change it again, it comes out the word limoach, which means to be the brain or the head. Joseph becomes, of course, the head of Egypt after Pharaoh. Now let's take the third possibility. Starts with the mem. So the first one would be melach, which means salt. This one I had a difficulty with. But since salt is related to bread, then if the Midrash is correct that it relates to Potiphar's wife, so when he marries Osnat, the daughter of Potipharah, and becomes his wife, so that this is the salted bread, meaning the bread which was for him. That's a possibility. The next one is even more significant because it's the word machal, which means to forgive. And at the end of Joseph's life, when the brothers are afraid that he's going to take revenge against them, and they make up the story that our father said that you have to be nice to us or whatever, Joseph said, I don't hold a grudge against you. He said, it's not you who sold me to Egypt, it's God who brought me to Egypt. So basically, Joseph forgives his brothers. He puts them through what he puts them through because he wants to see them if they have changed, if they have repented from what they did to him with Benjamin. That's why he does the whole thing with Benjamin to see if they've repented. But he forgives them in the end. So all these 6 words that have to do with the word dream relate to Joseph. And to be a dreamer, of course, is Shivat Zion, is to dream. The biggest dream is to dream how to take the Jewish people out of the diaspora back to the land of Israel. That's why Joseph, in Hebrew, Yosef, is a numerical value of 156. And 156 is also the numerical value of the Hebrew word Zion, of Zion, because Joseph is the one who says, bring my bones back when you leave here to go back to Canaan, to go back to the land of Israel. And Joseph represents, therefore, that power also to dream, because to go from one place to another, to establish yourself in the land of Israel, to gather the exiles, to rebuild the Jewish sovereignty in the temple, you need to be a dreamer and you need to have a plan. And that's the dream. We are in the festival of Hanukkah. And in the festival of Hanukkah, we had the Maccabees who dreamed a dream of Jewish sovereignty and the restoration of the temple in Judea at the time. It's not clear if they actually thought that they would succeed. But when you dream, you have a chance. And sometimes the wheels of destiny change around and give you that possibility with a little help from heaven, or sometimes a lot of help from heaven. And if you count the days from the beginning of the new year, which is the first day of Tishrei, so Tishrei is 30 days, Heshvan is 29 days, and then Kislev another 25 days to Hanukkah, there are 84 days from the beginning of year. 84 is the numerical value of the Hebrew word chalom, which means a dream, chet, lamed, vav, mem, which is usually spelled when it's a noun in the Torah with a vav. So Hanukkah represents one of these dreams of how to restore Jewish life in the land of Israel. And that has to do with Joseph. Joseph, the dreamer, Joseph, the one who protects his brethren in Egypt, and the one who also has the dream of restored Jewish life. Shalom, shalom.